What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Pardon My Pancreas podcast. We have a very exciting guest today, a good friend of mine, Jillian, aka T1D Chick. Jillian, thank you so much for coming on today.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
I am stoked to be finally got to have a chance to have a conversation. We started a little bit late because we lost track of time conversing, but I would love to share your story. I mean, your story is all over the place nowadays. You've been around for quite a bit on the social media front, but do you mind sharing a little bit about kind of your diabetes story, diagnosis?
Yeah, I'll give you like a quick glance of of a little bit of everything. So
Perfect.
I was diagnosed with type 1 around 1997. And I say around because I don't really have like a real diversity date.
What? Oh
Yeah,
no.
it's actually, no, it's really sad because everyone has one, but I don't, because when, medical records and all this stuff, when everything became more like digitalized, they were just like, yeah, after like this year, everything was burned. I'm like, wait, all our records, what about my diversity date?
No.
Yeah, so I was diagnosed at 8 years old, and my brother and I were actually diagnosed both with type 1 diabetes a year apart. So we were 7 and 8 years old when diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. So, and this was like 97, 98. So you didn't really have much like diabetes education out there, let alone resources, let alone community. So yeah, we've been living with type 1 diabetes. For me, it's been now 23 long years with type 1. And yeah, that's kind of like my little background with it. And I was diagnosed the summer of when I was actually visiting my father in Michigan. I was on summer break, and I had a lot of symptoms that my brother had the previous year. So when I was kind of showing symptoms like extreme thirst, I was wetting the bed when you like shouldn't really be wetting the bed, and just very like lethargic. That was just because my body was like shutting down. And my dad was able to bring me to the hospital right away, and I was diagnosed with type 1. So yeah, it's kind of, I feel like people all have different diagnosis stories, but my brother actually almost died. He was about the doctor. Yeah, I remember the doctor was said to my mom, like, if you didn't bring him in within like 3 to 5 minutes, he would have died because his blood sugars were just like off the charts, unreadable.
Hold on. Minutes?
So yeah, minutes.
What? I've heard days or hours, but
yeah, no, he
minutes.
was like minutes away from death, and he was in the hospital, I know, for like a long time. I was a kid, so everything's kind of like a little blurry, but yeah, so we were able to kind of like learn about diabetes because of his diagnosis. And then a year later, here we are with me.
No.
So yeah, so it was a long like road with diabetes, because my brother and I, we both started before pumps were a thing, CGMs, and even even just like the pens. So we were just doing like old school, shooting up syringes, mixing insulin. A lot of people are like, wait, what's that?
Right.
Cloudy and clear. Yeah, you had to mix them together, make sure you did everything right with the syringes. And that was kind of life at the end of the 90s, early 2000s with diabetes.
It still blows me away that for so long, especially when things like technology's taken off, we have computers in the 90s, right? And still they're just like, mix these liquids and hopefully you don't die. You're like, what?
Yeah, it's just wild, especially with no education.
Yeah.
Especially our parents that didn't have diabetes education, let alone really like medical backgrounds or anything. You're like, here you go, kind of like figure it out and like don't try, like don't die.
Let us know how it goes. If we don't hear from you, then we'll assume the
worst. Yeah, exactly.
Oh my goodness. And was it always just like very simplistic instructions of cloudy and clear, or were there like specific instructions?
There were so many ways of kind of like treating over the years. It was like, do this, a sliding scale, and da-da-da. And now, I mean, everything is down to like a precise science versus kind of like back then where everything was kind of like a guessing game. You know, there was really no like bolus and pre-bolus, like those words weren't a thing.
For real, it's nuts.
Yeah, it's
I
just more
never,
like here, like shoot up.
yeah, seriously. Like when I
Like,
was first
yeah,
diagnosed,
mealtime insulin.
what was that?
I was like, yeah, you know, they were just like the terminology was different
Oh
too, or
yeah.
you just didn't know about the real terminology. So many things were just so different. And, you know, I feel like I'm aging myself, but I'm 32 years old. So, you know, I'm not young, but I'm not older either. But it feels like, you know, it was kind of like dinosaur ages, like when you were living with diabetes in like the 90s, very early 2000s.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like the tech boom kind of mirrored in the diabetes world, right? Where it's like it went from desktop Windows 95 to 98, cell phones before you know it. For us, like when I got diagnosed, I wasn't the cloudy and clear mixed insulins kind of guy, but I
Okay.
was vials and syringes. I had Lantus vial and I had a Humalog vial, and it was just straight
Okay.
up syringes, right? Pens weren't a thing yet. And
Right.
within a couple of years, it was like, oh, there's this cool pump that doesn't have any tubing. I'm like, what? The Omnipod. You just stick it on. I was like, this is insane, right? Like pumps were around, but in the last 5 years, even CGMs are just
Right.
so accurate. And then now communicating with the pump, and it's insane.
Yeah,
Yeah.
my first pump was the Medtronic pump. So I was like a
Okay.
tuber for like 10 plus years. I was on Medtronic, but that was only because we didn't really have options. We weren't
Mhm.
told our options. No one told me about this Omnipod that was
Right.
tubeless. And yeah, so I was like a Medtronic user for like 10 to 12, maybe even more years. And then I kind of like discovered like the options out there living with diabetes. And honestly, that was thanks to social media.
That's been a huge game changer for me. I didn't know about half the stuff available until I stumbled across social media diabetes. I didn't know it
Yeah.
existed. And then just thousands of people and accounts everywhere. It's like, wow.
Yeah, it was just like a like new accounts were kind of like coming up every single like minute.
Yeah.
You're like, wait, is this a cool thing to do now? And now it's like everybody's on it and it's like this awesome, fun community and everyone just wants to be like kind of like in the know, especially with like even just like diabetes and products and technology. That's where I learned about a CGM. Had no idea about it until 2016, which is like literally just a few years ago.
Yeah. I think that's the same year I got my first CGM. That's nuts.
Okay.
But yeah, with social media, it's almost like it's cool to be in the know. It's cool to be knowledgeable about what's going on, what's new. I'd say there's one con where it's like cool to have a low A1C, right? But then it got cool to have like the lowest A1C and everyone's competing. But it's unnecessary. But
No,
cool.
it's so true though. But I think it's more of also like a friendly thing, but and it also keeps people accountable
Yeah.
because I once had an A1C and I've shared my story about this so many times that my A1C was once a 14, and because of like social media and learning and wanting to be a better just diabetic and a healthier version of me, like I saw all these accounts with the low A1Cs and the good blood sugars, and I wanted that because I was like not jealous in a bad way, but I was like, oh my God, like my A1C is like so high and I'm not doing the right things and I want to, I need accountability. So I use that to kind of like help me get on track with diabetes. And, after like blood, sweat, and tears, literally, I was able to, be one of those like cool people with like a healthy A1C.
That's awesome. And especially that it's become cool to be healthy, to take care of ourselves. Right? Like I didn't
Exactly.
take care of myself. I don't know about you, but I did not care about blood sugars when I was first diagnosed.
Yeah, I've been in DKA, so I've
Okay.
had a very long journey with diabetes. I've been through burnout and DKA a couple times, and I think a lot of us, especially those that were living with diabetes like long as well, like longer, you've kind of hit like almost everything you can experience. I feel like diabetes, and it's just every day is a learning process. Even now, I think I know everything, and then I'm on social media, and then I like learn something else.
Yeah, for real. Okay, let me pose a question to you. You
Okay.
experienced DKA and rough blood sugars. Now you're in a place where you're a lot more confident with your dosing, your carb
Hmm.
counting, I assume. Like you've got control over your diabetes. Do you believe that you have to let go of control to have fun in life and experience life, or can you hold on to control while also doing the things that you love?
Yes. So I feel like sometimes you know how you want to be better at something and there's always like those roadblocks, right? Like, oh, like I don't know how to do this, or I don't know how to get better or be better. You almost have to like hit, not everybody, but I know for me, I had to hit rock bottom to order for that light bulb to kind of go off and be like, oh my God, I was very close to near death experience, and I need to get my act together because I never want to feel that terrible in my life ever again. And you have to want to like have that desire. But for me, it was like hitting rock bottom to kind of climb back up and like kind of get to like the top. But now with kind of having tight control, although this week and last week was really like difficult for me, but because we all struggle, we're old people.
Right, right.
Which is important. But yeah, it's kind of like once you kind of like almost learn your body over again from like the start, right? Because like you're transitioning from all these highs to like normal numbers, and those normal numbers sometimes you're like shaking at like 150. Well, yeah, because I used to be 300, so yeah, that was a low. I was having a low
Right.
at like 150. But yeah, once you find, I feel like that middle ground, and you start learning your body and your blood sugars and your insulin needs, and you're treating accordingly, I feel like you could start really like living again. And that's how it kind of was. Like after you hit rock bottom, like even a few times, which I have, I felt like now I'm really truly living. And it's like, what, I'm in my 30s. So yeah, it's like I don't let diabetes hold me like back from anything. And it's just like, like beyond type 1, it's like I'm living beyond diabetes. There's so many things that I'm doing and trying to break these stereotypes and break these stigmas about like diabetes. And I don't let it hold me back from anything. I adapt to the things I want to do, and, try to like be like the best I can at whatever it is that I'm like doing.
Heck yeah. Okay, follow-up question for you then. How do
Okay.
you break the stereotypes of diabetes? How do you live beyond? That's a loaded
So
question.
I know, yeah, it's a loaded question. So I know you and I like talked about this before, but I say type 1, like as if it's like a real title, right? That I am a type 1 certified scuba diver.
Hmm.
So my boyfriend, he was a big scuba diver. And when we started dating, he goes, hey, how do you feel about diving? And I was like, wait, what? People do that? That's like a thing? And he's like, yeah, like, for your birthday, you want to get certified, like I will like, put you through like the program. And I was like, okay, I don't know how to do this, especially with diabetes. But so 3 years ago, I went to my local dive shop, and I'm just like, yeah, I want to dive. I want to learn how to dive. And you have, the forms and like the paperwork. And of course there's the box, right?
Of course.
The box. Yeah. And it's just like, oh, do you have any of these medical conditions? And of course, diabetes, check. Because the last thing you want to do is ever lie about a medical condition. Because if, God forbid, anything happens at any time, you want medical professionals to treat you accordingly.
Right.
You want them to make sure you're getting like the right medication. And so lying about it, like, is just, I would never recommend people to lie about the diabetes boxes on anything that you do. But yeah, so the dive place down the block from me, they're like, oh, hey, we saw you have diabetes. Like, that's, how we just need a doctor's note, just kind of clearing you, just saying that you understand everything with diabetes and diving, and your doctor's on board with it. And so I talked to my endo about it, and she goes, oh, you want to dive? And I'm just like, yeah, I want to learn how to dive. So I was at like my best control and management, during this time, because it was the last 3 years.
Yeah.
And she goes, yeah, where do I sign? And
Wow.
She went over just kind of like just little basics with me. And, nothing that I didn't really, I feel like already knew. But then I went through with the dive training and became a certified diver 3 years ago. And it was a lot of adjusting. And it was just kind of like, you have to now relearn your body now with like diving, because you can't just be like, I'm going to go jump in the water right now. You have to, I call it the diabetes dive plan, a diabetic dive plan. Okay. Right? You're not going to just jump in the water with all this stuff and not know your blood sugar, not know if there's insulin on board, or any of that, because those are really important factors when you're diving, especially with diabetes, because as you know, highs and lows can come at any point and you need to be prepared. So usually, I kind of have like this like checklist in my head. I make sure, I'm eating, let's say 2 hours before my diving, because that's like the car ride to like where we usually go.
Okay.
And yeah, and I kind of have like this system. I wake up and I eat right away, because then I have about 2 hours where, like, let's say that little insulin on board is going to kind of like now come out of my system. So I have either very minimal or no insulin on board. And I always want to make sure my blood sugar is above, like, between a certain range before I go into the water. Mm-hmm. So in the beginning, it was just a lot of trial and error, and that's what it is. You have to just kind of figure it out, but safely. Yeah. So when I diving isn't more than really like 30 minutes, especially when you're like a newer diver, so people, I think, have this idea like, oh my God, my blood sugars you're only down in the water usually about like 30 minutes, right? So you kind of have that on your side as well. But I make sure my blood sugars are no lower than 150 before getting in the water, because that way, with like, let's say no insulin on board, suspended pump, and like just the swimming, I feel like that's like a safe number for me not to really crash. Mm-hmm. And then, I try, 150 is great, but if I could be like 180, that would be like my ultimate for diving, because then it kind of gives you more like freedom it gives you more wiggle room with your blood sugar. And and then when I come out, usually it's like my blood sugar is like really nice.
Well, yeah, and you want to give that wiggle room too, so it's like you have peace of mind under the water, right? You don't want to be worried about blood sugars and not enjoying the scenery. Right.
And I always like pack like a lunchbox, and I have all my low treats, and I have like different things, because for different, like, let's say my blood sugar is 150 and I'm going to go diving, and I see like a slanted line, but not, not one that's like crashing. Right. Like, okay, I'm 150. I'm going to give myself, even though I'm not low, I'm going to, kind of think about it beforehand, but give myself like one Transcend gel, 15 grams. That way it bumps me up a little bit, not going to crash, and I still have that wiggle room. So it's definitely, you have to be on top of, I feel like, your diabetes before you just, want to just kind of like, pun intended, like dive right in. that was my dad joke of the
unavoidable. It had to happen. I love it. No, it's very true. Like having that buffer, right? It's so important. Mm-hmm. And understanding the variables too. Like you mentioned, if I'm slanted down just a little bit, it's not a fast drop, but I need to be aware of that. Do I have insulin on board? This is an activity, right? Like there's things that you have to consider in order to have that peace of mind, that safe dive. So that's really important.
Planning just with any like physical activity is just so important, and you never kind of want to like you have to always be in the know with your diabetes. And for me, I have a CGM and an insulin pump, so like diving is great with my Omnipod because it stays right on me. There's no disconnecting anything, and it's great. And then my Dexcom stays on and I dive. There's no issues with the gadgets. And then, you know, I swear by my CGM. Doesn't matter what CGM you have. I just feel like any CGM is like a blessing to have, especially if you're like, you know, wanting to dive and swim. It's just really nice to be able to pull out your blood sugar and adjust accordingly based on your lines.
Oh yeah, especially because before CGM, it was get out of the pool or the ocean, whatever. Try to dry your fingers off real quick, and they're not dry. And you poke it, and the water like makes the blood go everywhere.
I like how they're like, I'm just like, oh my God, that was the worst.
You get it.
And then they would always be like the errors on the machine. It'd be like,
oh my God,
like no, and then like trying to like squeeze it out again.
Yeah, because it's like half water. Like crap.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, diving has been awesome, and I really dove into it. This summer especially. This summer I've been diving. Like I feel like it's been like every other weekend, but this summer was actually my first time diving shipwrecks, which makes diving super, super cool. I live in Michigan, just in case people didn't realize, and we have like tons of shipwrecks in the Great Lakes.
That surprises me.
It's so awesome though, because you like people don't even realize it, let alone I didn't realize it until I got into like the dive community.
Yeah.
But yeah, there are like these incredible shipwrecks, and granted, a lot of them are super, super deep. But that's another thing with like diabetes and diving. I'm not probably ever going to be like this technical diver, right? Diving like 200 feet and down because of diabetes. Yeah. I love it enough where I want to enjoy it, but I also want to be safe. So my dives are, you know, right now, I hit like my PR, I hit like 60 feet. Nice. So for me, that's like deep, you know? Yeah. Because I was just more of a shallower diver, like usually like 30 to 40 feet. Mm-hmm. But I went on a charter and they're like, okay, this shipwreck is like 70 feet. And I'm like, oh my God. So, yeah, but once you kind of do it and you realize like, you're like, wow, like I'm diving with diabetes and I'm confident and I'm seeing these incredible shipwrecks from like 1800s. And it just kind of like, there's like this really cool, like, I don't know, this like butterfly feeling. And it just makes you, you know, be like, wow, like I want to share my story, and I want people out there to realize like, hey, diabetes isn't holding me back. You can do all this stuff living with diabetes, but you just have to be just smart about your diabetes and, you know, do everything safely and with a plan.
100%. Yeah. And it's super cool how you explain it with butterflies, how it's like you feel empowered because you're a diabetic who's doing these crazy cool things, in addition to that thing being crazy cool in the first place, right? Like diving itself, it's one of the best feelings ever. You feel like you're like flying, kind of. It's hard to explain.
Well, it's super cool because when you're on like a ship, like a charter, right? Because you have to take like a charter, you know, boat to like this shipwreck. And you're almost just like, I could be like a Navy SEAL, you know? I could be one of those SEALs, and, you know, who knows what else I could, you know, do, even though it's like, what, 60 feet, meanwhile people are diving like 200 feet. Right. But it almost like, you know, it's just a really cool feeling. And it's really cool when like other people also like push you to do like these really cool things that you would either never think of or think like, oh, I can't do that with diabetes. So I have to thank Mike for that one, because he really like, you know, opened my eyes to like this really cool thing that him and I now do together. So
100%. Thanks, Mike. That's awesome. Well, I'm going to have to try it again now that I'm controlled, because when I was diving, back in the day is before I cared about blood sugars really.
Okay.
So I would just snack and then dive and like didn't even check. I was very irresponsible, but it was still
That's
super fun.
wild.
You know what I mean? So now I'm not
You're like, but did I die?
right. That's pretty much the rating of what I would do for activities. Like, did I die? No. All right, let's do it again.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, no, it's an amazing and empowering activity. Anything you do, whether it's scuba diving, riding a bike, going for a hike through the mountains by yourself or with friends. With
Yep.
diabetes, you have this whole new level of like a badge of honor.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean? It's
Oh
like,
yeah.
oh, man.
It's like, everyone will have like their stuff, right? And like me, like, I'll be in like my wetsuit, my just everything all geared up, right? Because you think like you're like this, like, this little badass. And then you have like your little juice box and you're like, hold on guys, wait a minute.
Hold on guys. I gotta drink my juice.
Yeah. But I also love it too because it doesn't seem, especially like maybe where my community is here with diving, but it doesn't seem like it's really like, it's not a female dominated hobby or sport. And like my dive club that I'm part of, it's all like men. So I think I also love that too, that I'm like, hey, not only that, like I'm a type 1 diabetic and I'm a certified diver, but I'm also a woman. So it makes it even like super, just cooler.
Oh yeah, you're just proving everyone wrong on multiple fronts. That's gotta feel
Yeah, you're like, I'm gonna break this stereotype and this one and this one.
That's amazing.
But yeah, there's actually like, we do have like a little diabetic dive community. It's small,
oh, really?
but we do have one. Yeah.
I'm assuming it's worldwide.
Yeah, like everyone's everywhere. It's not
Yeah.
like a Michigan thing now. I don't even think I know another like diabetic diver here.
That's super cool because I've heard of lots of good spots like around the world that are amazing, which right now can't really travel. But
we'll have a
someday.
diabetic, meetup, on a charter one day.
There you go. Instead of life jackets, we'll just have juice boxes.
Yeah, I'll line them up.
I wanted to circle back to something actually you said in the beginning. Your last couple of weeks you mentioned were kind of rough with blood sugars. Did something switch up or is it completely random?
Oh my gosh, it was like the worst couple of weeks ever. So with diabetes kind of like opens the floodgates of sometimes complications. And when you hear the word complications, you automatically think, oh my God, your foot has to come off. Like, no.
Right.
Diabetes is just kind of like that underlying condition where it can, kind of open up other doors to other, disabilities, medical conditions. That's a better word. Yeah. So I've been, diagnosed, like I have carpal tunnel and trigger fingers, and trigger fingers have been like, just terrible to me. I started with like 1, then it was 2, and then now it's like 4 or 5. So now it's like one whole hand, right? But just like different hands and whatnot.
Yeah.
And for me, the pain is not with my carpal right now, but it's with like my trigger fingers. So in order to kind of like have a relief until like you get your trigger finger surgically released,
right.
I've been just kind of like getting a lot of cortisone injections to help with like the pain side of it. So the cortisone, if you've never like had cortisone injections, it's it's steroid. So it just like, you're basically like double arrows up all the time. And I know everyone will have different experiences with cortisone, but most diabetics that I know that had cortisone, is just, you just have to deal with those high blood sugars for a few days. Yeah. But so what happened to me was I had like, I woke up one day and I had like pain, and you don't realize how much you really use like your thumb, your hand, right? Just everything you do in life.
Right.
And it was just so painful. Made my appointment. I got, injection in my thumb and then like my finger, because it was like, starting to be a little iffy. So it was more of like a preventative. And then it was like a week or 2 later, I woke up and like my other hand was like my other
Oh
finger
no.
was, and it was my thumb. So I had like, this thumb is now released, right? You can see it more freely. But
Yeah.
this one,
Oh
it's
yeah.
not, yeah, you know. So I was like, oh my God. So I had the cortisone and the high blood sugars from this.
Yeah.
Right when I'm getting over it, I had to get cortisone in this hand.
No.
Then, and then this same, oh yeah, no, when it rains, it pours. That's how it is, So it was a few days after this injection with cortisone where my MRI came back from my knee because I kind of hurt my knee. And they're like, hey, you have a small tear in your meniscus. You have a little cyst going on. And you also have, early stages of arthritis. I'm like, what? I'm falling apart. Like ever since I turned 30, like my life was going like this with like, just like medically speaking. So it goes, yeah, we're going to shoot you up with cortisone and you'll, that'll help. So between this cortisone with the blood sugars and then a few days later, my knee, I was like 300 was like my norm. When I saw 300, it wasn't even like, oh my God, I'm 300, which is like very rarely I would ever hit 300, honestly.
Right.
Like because of that good control I got.
Yeah.
And so like 300s were like that scary high for me. And the last 2 weeks, they've been like, oh, okay, it's 300. All right. And it felt like no matter how much insulin I was giving myself, it was like water. It wasn't like, and you've had a Freza or use it, right?
I've actually never used a Freza. I want to. I'm gonna try it.
It's a miracle worker. So Freza, like you'll see your blood sugar, the 300 to like, going down like this, but like not crashing you. So I loved it.
Oh man.
I would like double dose myself on a Freza to help with that stubborn high. It wouldn't even budge my blood sugars because that's how impactful like cortisone can be. And like I said, you'll have different effects for each person. It'll be a little different, but it was just all that cortisone, plus the diabetes, all in that short time, just kind of like
just
really
testing Jillian. Can she push through this?
It pushed every limit I had. But you know how it is, like when you're on like this good kick and something happens, right? You get kind of like knocked down a little bit, but it also like affects like mentally, not just physically, 100%. But it's also mentally too, because you're just like, oh my God, I'm 300. And now all you're thinking about is like your blood sugars and dosing, and now the dehydration and like the lethargic feeling. It's just kind of like this like domino effect, but also I feel like, with the mental health aspect of it too. So I've been pushed, and, hopefully this week I'll get back to normal-ish, which it looks like it's already slowing down. So that's good.
Okay. I'm glad to hear that. And I mean, you're right. It is expected, right? Cortisone is a steroid. Steroids tend to rise blood sugars, but that back to back, that's next level. I'm so sorry to hear that, Jillian. That's rough.
It's a lot, but you know what? It's really cool that I have like my social media platform to share all this, because we need to talk about diabetes complications, and not, not like the foot amputations, just real things that like, I want to say normal diabetics could kind of get at any point. But even with tight control, good management, you're not like, we have to like not think that we're like inevitable, right? Because it can happen to us at any time. Your A1C could be 5.7 for 4 years. That's what mine's been now for like quite a few years. But hey, I'm still waking up with like, the carpal and the trigger. And then, so it's important, it's nice that I could like share my life and people could relate to that. And then we also have like our support system, our community.
Yeah. Well, okay. So what is, and you make this as long or as short as you want, but what would be a strategy that you've implemented for your mindset, your mental health, through these testing times, these trials?
I try to really, you know, having someone to talk to is always great, like a diet buddy. I talk to my diet buddy all the time, and we help each other. But more of just like a personal thing, I will just kind of like trial and error how to kind of get my blood sugar like a little, better during, let's say just the cortisone. But I also try to keep like very active. I love being like outside, and I'm always going for bicycle rides, and I'm going kayaking, and I'm going scuba diving on weekends. And I think when you find like those things that make you happy, those like positive, just, like that outlet, that's what kind of helps me. So it could be different for each one of us. Some people will listen to podcasts or, read books. But for me, I just like being like physically active, and that kind of puts me in like a good mood. And I'm like, all right, I'm having a bad day or I'm having a bad week, but it's not a bad life. I know I'll get like over this hurdle. And I think it's kind of important for everybody to realize that like we all have bad days, we all have bad weeks, but it doesn't mean that we're, it's a bad life total. Like tomorrow will be a new day, and you have to just like think about tomorrow, not, too far out. Just get through today, and then you'll wake up and it's a new day tomorrow. Then you'll deal with those set of problems that come. But finding an outlet is just important. And, it's like try just different hobbies and doing different things until you find something that you truly love and enjoy.
Yeah, I totally relate with that one though. Like outdoors, getting active, that's like how I set myself up to deal with other things in life. Totally get it. And I realize we might have just used up one of your golden nuggets of advice. But one thing that I like to do, because I know that we've been on here for a bit, to wrap up is I would love to ask you, what would be a golden nugget of advice in the diabetes realm? Could be mindset, that you'd like to kind of give to our followers. What's something that has helped you or that has helped others in the past?
I actually made a post about this today about like feeling guilty, right? Because when sometimes we have either high blood sugars or low blood sugars, we're like always feeling guilty. And like living with this guilt is just so unhealthy for us. And I try to like not let diabetes like be all of me and consume me. It's so important to kind of like do everything you want to do and be mindful that you have diabetes, but don't let it control you. Don't let it just consume you. And, I think when you kind of go from a negative mindset, and you start finding the things you love, you become like more positive. And I just feel like you live a better, healthier life. And because that's what I went through. I was like this negative person, this dark person. And once I was finding all these outlets to kind of like do things, I just felt like I became a happier person, and like not letting diabetes just kind of like dominate my life.
That's amazing. And I always love that message of positivity. So the fact that you're bringing that up is fantastic. Not that it like you have to be positive all the time, right? Like we know that's not possible.
Yeah, because we're not. Yeah, we are not. It's not an everyday thing, right?
Right. But to like actively seek out what is going well. What can I be grateful for too? Like, yeah, that's a whole nother episode. But yeah, thank you, Jillian, for that. What I would love is to know where our audience can find you, whether it's a website or Instagram or you use Twitter. I don't know if that's still on TikTok.
Yeah, it's kind of weird. I'm actually on all of them. So my Facebook page, Instagram page, my TikTok, it's all T1D Chick, and Twitter is T1D Chick _ because someone borrowed it, took the name.
How dare they?
No. But yeah, so basically on every social media, you could just find me at T1D Chick. So if you have any questions, or anyone could message me at any time, and I will promise to answer in a very timely manner.
Wow, that's a big promise.
Yeah, it is.
You're like, shoot.
I'm like, oh man.
Oh my goodness. Well, okay, so everyone listening, go check out T1D Chick. I follow her, so you should too. She's awesome. And she posts a ton of stuff, all sorts of walks of life. She's more than her diabetes, and she's a living testament that diabetics can do whatever they want, including scuba diving. So thank you so much, Jillian, for hopping on today. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, thank you so much. This is awesome. I know it was long overdue, so I'm glad we were able to do it.
100%. So last reminder, everybody, go check out T1D Chick. All of the social media platforms except for the _1, which is Twitter. Is that right?
Twitter, yeah.
Twitter. Okay, yeah. Everything else is T1D Chick. Thank you, Jillian. Everybody else, go check out the other episodes. Be sure to subscribe and keep up the fight. Alrighty, guys. So that is it for today's episode. However, if you are an existing listener of the Pardon My Pancreas podcast, then you are well aware that there is a free training waiting for you if you are looking to stabilize and predict your blood sugars. So if you want to grab that free training, head over to diabetesinaction.com. That's it for today, guys. Have an awesome day. I wish you the stablest of blood sugars and keep up the fight.